Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're taking a deep, reflective dive into Reverend Felicia O'Neill's truly incredible book, When God Comes Near. If you're a spiritually curious person, maybe you're balancing heavy professional responsibilities, complex emotions, or you're just looking for a faith that feels, well, a bit more grown up, you are absolutely in the right place. We're not doing simplistic, flattened-out moral lessons today. Instead, we're exploring a deeply pastoral reading of John's Gospel that meets us exactly where we are, right in the middle of our messy, ordinary lives.
Seeing is not the end of the journey. Seeing deepens into recognition. We're going to anchor right here on this beautiful thought from the book's introduction, because it's the core thesis of everything we're about to uncover. Moving from just seeing God to actually recognizing God. As the book points out, so many people in the Gospel of John see Jesus with their own two eyes, way before they truly recognize him. They hear the words, but the meaning, it totally flies over their heads. And you know, recognition isn't about snapping your fingers and having instant certainty. It's a slow awakening. It's what happens when our everyday encounters, our blunders and grace all finally collide.
Okay, let's map out our journey through this reading guide. We're going to move sequentially through the book in 5 big steps. First, moving from seeing to recognizing. Second, we'll look at time, place, and flesh. Third, we'll examine ourselves before God. Fourth, we'll dive into the hour and the new morning. And finally, we'll wrap up with the sacred made near. Let's get right into it.
Starting off with part 1, the introduction, from seeing to recognizing. So right out of the gate, we learn that John's Gospel is packed with layered symbols, things like water and light. And here's the trick. They're meant to train our spiritual perception. In John, water is literally almost never just water. Bread is never just bread. It's a masterclass in learning how to pay attention. God is coming near, sure, but to actually catch it, we have to learn to read the signs on a completely different level.
And that journey of recognition is brilliantly charted out here. It's such a realistic human progression. We start at the surface level with basic seeing. But then, and I absolutely love this, almost immediately we hit misunderstanding and questioning. And that is completely normal. The book makes a massive point that recognition is slow. It unfolds through awkward conversations, through deep grief, through hunger and love. It's through these incredibly real, very messy life moments that we finally stumbled toward true revelation and ultimately become witnesses.
Moving right along into section 2, covering chapters 1 through 3, time, place, and flesh. This is where the book really starts to disrupt our assumptions about how and where the sacred is supposed to show up, looking closely at 3 major human limitations.
Unpacking chapter 1, we're looking at time. Think about your own life for a second. We usually experience time as pure anxiety, right? We're always managing it, feeling pressured, terrified we're running out of it. But look at Jesus' rhythm in the Gospel of John. He is literally never rushed. He's never sweating the public pressure or panicking over a crisis. He operates on a completely different clock, what the text calls his hour. Time isn't just a resource to furiously manage, it's the actual space where God's purpose is patiently revealed.
Then in chapter 2, we tackle place. We see how Jesus actually fulfills rather than destroys the temple. It's so easy for us to get attached to familiar, sacred architecture. You know, the stone sanctuaries, the childhood churches, the formal institutions. But Jesus totally reorients this. He declares his own body to be the temple. The sacred isn't erased, it's fulfilled in a living, breathing person. God is no longer boxed into the buildings where we first learned to recognize him.
Which brings us to this absolutely crucial point in chapter 3. Love has a body. This is the incarnation. God embracing extreme, breathtaking vulnerability by entering our world wrapped up in human flesh, experiencing actual hunger and real fatigue. The Word became flesh. That means our physical bodies matter. God doesn't bypass our messy human experience to get close to us. He steps right into the middle of it. Jesus gets exhausted sitting by a well. He asks for a drink of water. He openly weeps at a friend's tomb. He washes dirty feet. Love has a body, which means God cares deeply about your exhaustion, your hunger, and your very real physical limits.
All right, section 3, hitting chapter 4, ourselves before God. We're pivoting to the emotional core of this explainer right here. We're holding up a mirror to our own complex humanity and asking, what does John's Gospel actually say about us? And honestly, the answer is so generous. We are longing, we are limited, we are deeply beloved, and yes, we are often incredibly resistant.
Check out these doorways of desire, thirst, hunger, and grief. What is just so profound to me here is how Jesus meets people right inside their deepest desires while they are still becoming. Long before they have it all figured out. Think of the Samaritan woman at the well, or Nicodemus sneaking around in the middle of the night. Their theology was not perfectly polished, but they brought their thirst, their curiosity, their intense grief. And John's gospel shows us that these raw human desires are actually doorways. Jesus engages us while we're still a work in progress. You do not need perfect faith to approach God. Your recognition can absolutely begin way before your understanding catches up.
But that brings us to a pretty searching question. Where do we resist recognition simply because we're too attached to the familiar? It's the flip side of being human, right? Sometimes we are just gripping so tightly to our comfortable religious routines, our status, or our desperate need to be in control, that when God actually comes near, especially if it's disruptive, we push back. We end up wanting the safety of the known way more than the living, unpredictable presence of the divine.
Let's transition to Section 4, Chapters 5 and 6, The Hour and New Morning. This is where the story ramps up to the climax of the gospel. We're diving into the intense paradox of glory and resurrection, shifting from the not yet of Jesus' timeline to the explosive arrival of his defining hour.
Chapter 5 gives us a vitally important theological guardrail. The cross is not violence made holy. It is divine love remaining perfectly faithful even when human violence does its absolute worst. I really want to emphasize this. When Jesus' hour finally hits, it's not some polished, triumphant victory lap. It is the cross. But the book is crystal clear. The cross does not romanticize abuse. It doesn't demand self-erasure. Instead, it reveals a God who steps right up to human pain and refuses to become cruel in return. It's love remaining completely steadfast in the dark.
And speaking of the dark, moving into chapter 6, we get this unforgettable image of Mary Magdalene. Resurrection begins while it is still dark. Mary goes to the tomb early, in the literal and emotional pitch black. She sees the empty tomb and immediately assumes the absolute worst. And the book points out how pastorally, beautifully honest that is. I mean, how often does God do something totally new in our lives? But because we don't have the full picture yet, our first reaction is just pure grief. It just feels like a loss. But resurrection begins while it is still dark. A new morning can start breaking before we even understand what's happening.
Then we have Thomas. Wounds become witness. Jesus meets Thomas right through his physical scars, and it's this profound reminder that redemption doesn't demand amnesia. We don't have to pretend the wounds were never there. The resurrection didn't just erase Jesus' body or his painful history. He still bears the marks of the crucifixion, and he actively invites Thomas to touch them. The wounds themselves become the very site of recognition. They become the witness. It's such a powerful message. God's redeeming presence is strong enough to meet us in the absolute truth of our pain, without ever forcing us to fake it or hide our scars. Finally, Section 5, bringing us to the conclusion, the sacred made near. This is where we take all this magnificent, ancient theology and pull it right down to the pavement of your everyday life. Because at the end of the day, recognizing God when God comes near is supposed to change how we actually live. The ultimate takeaway? God's nearness is not trapped inside formal religious spaces. The sacred bleeds right into your incredibly ordinary encounters. Jesus cooks breakfast for his friends on a random beach. He shows up behind locked doors when they are completely terrified. The Word became flesh and dwelt among us. And what that really means is that your conversations at the water cooler, your quiet dread in a hospital waiting room, your messy kitchen table, those are the exact places where the sacred is fulfilled. That is where God can be recognized.
So I want to leave you with this to chew on as you go about your week. Where might God be coming near to you right now, in the totally ordinary stuff? And more importantly, are you ready to recognize it? Keep your spiritual eyes wide open, because God might just be nearer than you ever assumed, nearer than your certainty, nearer than your confusion, and absolutely nearer than your grief. I really hope our time together today has sparked something for you and maybe helped you re-examine how you look for the sacred in your own life. Keep reflecting, keep learning, and keep practicing how to recognize what has been right in front of you all along.